Wow, I sure do love D&D. I love playing all these characters. I can't believe I've never known what an Aarakocra was. Grian would make a pretty cute Aarakocra. Look, I have a lot of projects going on. Can we just shelf this for a while? Please? You know, Grian would make a cute Aarakocra. Jimmy could be a wizard practicing magic. Scar has total changeling energy. Tango would make an amazing artificer. Cleo is such a necromancer. Scar could have a tiny braid. Fine! Hi, everyone, and welcome back. You might have guessed, but this has been rattling around in my brain for a while now. I love D&D, and although my group isn't as roleplay heavy as I would like, these stupid worlds plague me. I love envisioning different D&D setups, and then one day, I made the mistake of thinking about Grian. That's right, the Life series has infiltrated yet another one of my hobbies. In a desperate bid to quell this obsession, I decided to draw a quick sketch of Aarakocra Grian. Whoops. So yeah, I'm going to be drawing Life series members as D&D characters and explaining the backstory for each of them. I can't fit everyone in one video, obviously, but if you'd like a part 2, let me know and I'll do another batch. One more important note before we start. This is about characters only and not the real content creators. I'm just doing a fun world building exercise and I don't mean to offend anyone with this video. And I think that's the preamble. Enjoy! Grian had never meant to enter a coven. He had never meant to talk with the Watchers. He didn't want to. It was too late now. Besides, he had gotten everything he wanted, and it had been a good deal. A little bit of his soul, and a whole lot of theirs. I'm going to start this video off with Grian, who is an Aarakocra Warlock. For those of you who haven't played D&D, an Aarakocra is a bird-like humanoid race who live in high-altitude mountains or sequestered in trees. While flying, they appear to look like large birds, and only when they land can you see the more human features. Warlocks are magic users who gain their power through a deal with a supernatural entity. Grian lived in a large rocky mountain range with his brother Jimmy and the rest of his tribe. Most of them were accomplished magic users who attended wizarding schools designed to train them in preparation for letting them leave the nest and enter the real world. Grian was quite the prankster, and after one too many times angering the headmaster of the school, he was expelled. Grian, panicked, unsure of how he could possibly learn magic on his own, resorted to other methods. He was out flying in a storm. That wasn't uncommon. He had flown in a storm before, but the rain was streaming down violently, coating his wings and slowing his flight. Erring on the side of caution, he landed, taking shelter in a nearby cave. And to his surprise, someone was already there. Grian thought it was an Aarakocra, but on closer inspection, the figure's large wings were hooked, and its beak was a smoky illusion, its beady purple eyes peering out from the dark like a dying lantern. Grian hadn't wanted to trust the shadowy figure, but it drew him in. It claimed itself a mischief maker, a simple teasing jokester, cast from its home. It understood Grian, and it offered him a deal. Power, all the power you could have learned from your school and more. And in exchange, you take up the Watcher insignia and you choose, willingly, to become one of us. After a long internal war with himself, Grian agreed. It changed less than he expected. Now that he could do his own magic, he was able to fly away on his birthday like his nestmate. And Jimmy and Grian traveled towards human civilization. They met a changeling about their age, trying to get Jimmy's number for some girl, but he was a charming rascal and clearly alone. The changeling, who introduced himself as Scar, decided to travel with them, and after picking up a young artificer, Grian almost started to feel like he had made the right decision. But he knows what he did. He knows the fact that Scar and Jimmy's suffering tastes like honey is a bad sign. He knows the eyes approaching in his nightmares. It's a warning. He knows the extra pair of wings starting to sprout from his back, and it is dangerous. His eyes are going white, and he knows one day that debt will be repaid. Grian's design was very fun. Try to keep him in mind when you see Jimmy's design. While he's more brown in color, I added yellow feathers around his nose as a sort of hint to them being brothers. I used purple as his accent color, and I imagine the spells he casts give off a light purple glow as a sign of his deal. I almost gave him pure black eyes to be more accurate to the Minecraft skin, but I decided the eerie white glow just fit the character vibe I was going for too well. Scar loved being a changeling. He loved switching out his faces for someone new. He loved putting on voices to sell the character he was playing. More than anything, he loved that when he had a new face, none of his actions had consequences. Scar is a changeling rogue. Changelings are creatures who can make their appearance completely shift with only a thought. Their true forms show them as almost blank, their skin's monotone, and the slight fey-like appearance and only the slight fey-like appearance to differentiate them from placid dolls. And rogues are your classic thieves, assassins, and general scoundrels who plague all cities. Scar was born to changeling parents who were both involved in an acting group. Renowned for their abilities to play any character given to them, changelings made some of the best actors in the business. Scar was no doubt going to follow in their footsteps, but when he was 6, the theater burned down on opening night, killing Scar's parents and giving him the scars across the entire half of his body. Orphaned and struggling for money, he did the one thing he knew he would be good at: shifting. Not for himself, obviously. He was for rent, if you will. He would pretend to be someone's partner to appease their parents, or make someone jealous. He would get information from someone to relay back to the client. He collected material for blackmail, and sometimes he merely stood in at a social event of some place someone did not want to be. He took on any face required of him, any shape that would suit the event. He was a king, a lover, a businessman, a messenger, the scum off of someone's shoe. It was a good job, and he was naturally talented to boot. Sure, it would have been nice to be an actor, but he was kind of an actor, just his roles were a little more real. He had been talking to a tall, yellow Aarakocra, acting as a young woman who was too shy to talk to him all on her acting as a young woman who was just too shy to talk to him all on her own. As she told Scar to break the ice for her, just so she didn't have to introduce herself. Halfway through his speech, the Aarakocra's shorter friend called Scar out. The friend, Grian, seemed to be watching intently the whole time anyways, and apparently was someone who could stare straight through him. Fine, Scar was intrigued, and maybe a little desperate. He had been playing a character so long, someone who could see past his shapes and stare right at him. Con art was a job Scar could do on the go, so that day he packed his things, and he went. Scar's design was definitely the toughest for me. I just wasn't sure what I wanted to do. He had so many faces, that's kind of the point, and I think he would usually hide his scars, just because it makes people perceive him a certain way. His gray face is just out of the ordinary. I think he'd make himself look more like an elf when he's out and about. But for this design, I drew him in his changeling form, with all the scars he would have gotten from the fire. I put him in a blue singular sleeve shirt that's gender neutral, to look proper in both male and female shifts. Jimmy was half certain he was cursed. You knew how the old saying went: 2 times is a coincidence, 3 is a pattern. And Jimmy's bad luck had certainly become a pattern. And Jimmy is an Aarakocra wizard. I already explained the Aarakocras for Grian's character, and wizards are pretty self-explanatory. They just learn their magic from good old hard work. Jimmy's bad luck started when he hatched. It didn't help he was struck by lightning on his first flight. That hadn't been fun. He worked his tail off to graduate from the Alpine School of Wizardry, and even harder after his little brother was expelled, knowing if they both failed, their parents would lose all credibility among the other wizards. Somehow, Grian had managed to learn magic on his own. Jimmy tried not to be bitter about that. Things just seemed to go right for Grian, and it did Jimmy no good to be jealous. He was just excited his brother had managed things on his own, so that when the time came for them to fly out into the world, they could go as a pair. In a long string of misfortune, Jimmy had crashed into a tree when scouting, and his wing wasn't pretty. It needed a splint, an expensive splint. A changeling they were traveling with simply laughed and brought them to a smithing hut, where a young tiefling artificer was tinkering. Scar said he owed him a favor and shifted into a young boy before revealing his true identity once the job was done. Luckily, his feelings weren't too hurt, and when Jimmy offered to let the tiefling travel with them, he gave him an enthusiastic yes. That made Jimmy happier than he would have liked to admit. Besides, having a technical genius couldn't help if he ran into any more trees. Jimmy's design was very inspired by canaries. With the yellow feathers, I gave him a long beak and made him look a little stretched out compared to his brother, along with the droopy feathers on his face. I thought it made him look a bit like a wet cat. I thought the blue shawl looked a lot like his jacket thing that he wears on his skin, and I went with white for his undershirt. I know Jimmy has brown eyes, but I like the shocked look that the blue gave him, and so sue me. I like blue and yellow. Tango decided at a very young age he wanted to build something great. And something deadly. He drew up schematics, played old games. He would stare at his toys, imagining they were people, running through a maze of his creation. Tango is a tiefling artificer. A tiefling is an infernal race, and they face some of the harshest judgment from the folks around them. They have colorful skin, are resistant to fire, and some have horns and tails. An artificer is a wizard who draws their power from technology, and are masters of ingenuity. A tiefling is a demon child, and Tango was aware of that. He saw the eyes trailing him as he passed. He saw the stares of people as he went to the market. He was more than a little ashamed to admit he had paid a changeling to pretend to be his friend, just to quell the looks. He had no clue where it came from. He had no parents that he knew of. He was just seen as the curse. The advantage to being a tiefling, though, is he could work in the forges without burning himself. And he did just that. The half-orc shop owner hadn't judged him anyways. She was just as ridiculed. He enjoyed working there. It was a steady wage, a roof over his head. Plus, the boss would let him take home the scrap metal at the end of the day. And that meant he got time to work on his true passion, his arenas. He would build metal boxes and let the rats attempt to escape. Then he moved on to mazes. And he thought about games, real games that people played and won. He wanted to build those. And when he one day achieved his dream, he would call it decked out. It was quiet the day in the shop when some changeling he had hired all those years ago showed up with an Aarakocra leaning over his shoulder. It had a badly broken wing, twisted at an unnatural angle. Tango had constructed him a splint, and he could barely contain his excitement when the party offered to let him travel with. With a kind goodbye to his boss, he was off, excited to finally see the world his grand arenas would exist in. Tango was the last design I did, and he was so fun. I originally wanted to give him a more reddish skin tone, but I like the red freckles on the gray skin. It cuts off at the bust, but he is wearing overalls, and he has a long tail. One thing I thought I should mention, although most tieflings had horns, Tango doesn't. If you don't know, Tango has said before that he doesn't like seeing his character drawn with horns, so I opted not to include them just to respect that. And there they are. If I do a part 2, I'm going to use one D&D party at a time, just for moderation's sake. If you have a team name suggestion for these 4, please let me know. I'm curious if you got this far. And since you did get this far, maybe you enjoyed the video, and maybe you want to see more stuff like this. If so, please consider subscribing. The link to my socials along with my book are down in the description. Thank you all so much for watching, and have a wonderful rest of your day.